Hey there, everyone. It is Irene Lyon here, and welcome to this entire world of nervous system health and healing. And today I definitely have a story of nervous system health and healing for you. I am speaking with one of my alumni. Her name is Selden from my SmartBody SmartMind program. And she has a beautiful story to share around healing from an autoimmune condition that we would know as lupus. We get into what this is, how she sees autoimmune conditions now that she has really healed and come out the other side. We talk about parenting and relationship and symptoms and just being with the body and learning about the body and the subtlety of this work. We also talk a little bit about what she's doing now with her life. So all links and mentions are somewhere near this, either in the show more or show notes section. I hope you enjoy our conversation. And if you are interested in learning more about Smart Body, Smart Mind, again, somewhere near here will be links to that program. If you're watching this when we put this out live, it's possible that we are about to start another round of Smart Body, Smart Mind. We open up membership usually only once a year, but we're opening up again in September of 2022. So be sure to look out for that. Enjoy this conversation, and I really hope this gives you some inspiration and understanding of what it is all about to work at this level of the nervous system and heal traumas at this somatic level. Enjoy. Hello, Selden. Welcome. Welcome.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I am so excited to talk to you. It was actually a mutual friend that connected us, even though you've been in
Yeah,
Smart Body, Smart Mind.
yes.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
tell people who you are, what you do,
Okay,
and why we're here talking today.
amazing. Yeah, so Janet connected us, who I love so much. I've been working with her for, gosh, years. I have been on a lupus healing journey for, I didn't realize I was on the lupus healing journey for the majority of this journey, but for the past, I was finally diagnosed at age 40 after suffering from for since adolescence, I was suffering from symptoms and actually dissociation and some symptoms like that started even before, like right around the age of 5, like kindergarten.
Oh, wow.
Um, yeah, and once I was about 13, I was suffering from depression, ADD. They diagnosed this as ADD, chronic fatigue. I just was I was having a hard time functioning. I was having a hard time in school, and I got, of course, my parents did their best, but for the most part, they didn't really understand what was going on and didn't fully believe, I think, that my body was like really in pain and fatigue
Hmm.
and all the things. And so, they sent me to a doctor. This was the early 90s, and autoimmune was not really on anybody's radar for someone who's 12 or 13 years old.
Nope.
Um, and so they sent me to a psychiatrist and they put me on Ritalin. So I proceeded to take some form of stimulant medication to function until I had my daughter at the age of 34, which is pretty incredible because there's with autoimmune and lupus, there's many layers to
Hmm.
why our body sort of has these issues and triggers and all the things. Um, but for me, I was covering up what I was feeling, obviously with the stimulant medications, and I was just suppressing what the symptoms were. And in the meantime of doing that, I was just really disconnecting from my body, completely disconnecting from my body and dissociating from my body. And so when I had my daughter, I decided I wasn't going to take stimulant medications anymore. That never felt intuitively right to me, but I still wasn't able to get answers from
Right.
anybody.
Right.
And I went to a million doctors and I went to a ton of shrinks. And, I wasn't really satisfied with the answers that I was getting. So I kind of went on my own journey, went on my own health journey. And then that's what led me to you. I know this is like a long-winded way to tell you why I'm here, but
Yeah.
my work with SBSM has really sent me home to my body again, which is like a place that I don't think I've been in since I was like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know it's gonna. I see. I'm getting emotional, but that's okay.
Emotions are, well,
Yeah,
as we know, when we suppress emotions, that's what makes us
I
sick. That's what
know.
drives a lot of the autoimmune illness.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had your daughter when you were 34.
I was 34 when I got pregnant. I was 35, I think, when I had her. Obviously, when I got pregnant, I stopped taking the medications. And then after I had her, I was going to go back to taking them because I had a career and now I had a baby. And I was like, how am I going to function? Because I literally, like, I mean, I really had a hard time functioning. Like, I really could barely get out of bed. My body really hurt all the time. I was incredibly heavy and my
Mm.
joints were always aching. And then because my body felt like that, I was going into depression and victim and what's wrong with me. And I don't understand why I'm not like, why I can't function like everybody else.
Yeah.
And so I had a lot of stories sort of, helping to sort of push this all the inflammation in my body, that was going on. And I will say with autoimmune, there's, like I said before, there's a lot of layers to it. It's never just like one thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, where I started was I cleaned up my diet. I do an elimination diet currently. And so I try to keep the inflammatory foods out. That's always going to kind of be a part of my life. Watching what I eat and making sure I eat really clean. But what, I did like everything all the autoimmune people say to do,
Yeah.
but the trauma was like this missing link. And it was like nobody was really talking about that and nobody was really guiding me into that. And that's actually how I found Janet and I started doing energy work.
Yeah.
And that's when I started. What's in the body is so incredible because what happened was I started really praying. And so I
Mm.
really started to work on my spiritual connection because I was like, I was desperate. At this point, I had 2 kids
Mm-hmm.
and my flares were tremendous. And actually my neurological symptoms were starting to get really bad. So I was having memory and confusion issues. I was having hand and arm tingling and numbness and
Yeah.
feet tingling and numbness. My digestive system was a wreck. And so I really was desperate at this point. And so, I started going out beyond the food stuff. And right when I made that decision and sort of asked God and the universe to like, I was ready for the answer, I
Mm-hmm.
started having dreams of a trauma that I had when I was 4.
Oh.
And so it was incredible because, I had no idea that this trauma happened, but all signs led to this thing. I mean, it was like when the memories started coming back, because once I started dreaming about it, it was like the memories kind of started to snowball. And like I
Mm.
wouldn't have to be dreaming to be like, oh my gosh. And I think in the past, had I not kind of started already on my healing journey, I may have pushed that down. And I probably did at some point
Yeah.
along the 35 years now that I had been trying
Yeah.
to heal. And so, anyway, that was kind of it. Then I was like, oh my gosh, it's the trauma. Like it was like a huge epiphany and turning point for my healing journey. And I think that there's, of the hundreds of millions of people who are suffering with autoimmune, I mean, really, it's an astounding number of people. There is a whole lot of people who are not healing with diet alone,
Of
and
course.
we're hearing so much about diet, and that's great. That is a piece of it that I think does have to be there. But, it can be really frustrating hearing about these people going vegan or, going paleo, and like all of a sudden they're healed. And there's this whole group of people that are like, I'm not healing, or like I've hit a plateau, right?
Yeah.
Because like cleaning up my diet healed some things, But
course.
I was still having huge, massive flares that were taking me out, you know? I don't believe, and a lot of sort of more holistic minded people, I think, agree with me that the body is attacking itself. I just don't get on board
Mm.
that the body would ever do that, right? The body is protecting us. The body
Mm.
is trying to help us, you know? The body is constantly fighting for us. So the fact, this idea, this story, this allopathic model that the body is attacking you is actually the first step in my program that we tackle, because it's like, if you believe that your body has gone against you, then you believe your body is faulty in some way, and that
Mm.
needs to be shifted before the real healing can take place.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you could probably get a million different answers about what lupus is, but I'll say what I think it is. I mean, what generally I'll say happens in the body. I have systemic lupus, so it's just inflammation. It's like the integrative doctors will describe this sort of bucket, right? The
Mm.
inflammatory bucket. I don't know if you've ever heard this metaphor, but it's like,
No.
you know, we have like a bucket in our body and we can put so many inflammatory triggers in the bucket before it starts to sort of, it's like the swimming pool
Overflow. Yeah.
overflow. So with autoimmune, it's like glyphosate, you know, toxic food, processed foods. It could be mold in your environment. It could be
Mm-hmm.
early childhood trauma is in there. The thing is not a lot of people are talking about that, like I was saying before, right? So you have all these things, and then all of a sudden you're overflowing, and then you have inflammatory triggers and symptoms that are going off all over the
Yeah.
place. With lupus, I would say the most common symptoms is chronic pain and chronic fatigue.
Mm.
I can't tell you that there's much of a difference between chronic fatigue syndrome and the chronic fatigue that I experience or
Yeah.
have experienced as lupus. And to be totally honest, I don't know that there's so much of a difference between that and Lyme disease. You know, I know
Sounds.
they say that Lyme disease is a bacteria, but maybe it's just that bacteria happens to be, you know, 3/4 of filling up that cup, or that maybe that's the bacteria that's, you know, that's overflowing the cup,
Yeah.
or, you know. Um, and so, but with lupus, the symptoms can really get, there's like a skin rash that's pretty
Mm.
typical people get with lupus. There's the hand and arm tingling stuff, memory confusion. But it's interesting, if you look it up, they don't really classify those as typical symptoms. They just
Mm.
say you might also experience this. You might have like or what will they say? Like, you know, you might be more susceptible to, you know, these symptoms, but they won't say it's a symptom of lupus. I think basically your body's just sensitive and it's firing off because it's like, hey, something's wrong.
Wrong.
Something's
Yeah.
going on and it needs to be looked at, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so funny because my symptoms used to scare the shit out of me. Can I cuss on here?
Of course you can. Swear all you want.
Okay. My symptoms used to scare me, and the stories I would tell myself around my symptoms, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with my body, what, you know, and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what's going on, body? Like, you
Mm.
know, I go into it with that curiosity, like you teach, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because it is doing actually something for me, you know?
100%.
Yeah, it's like telling me to slow down, or it's telling me to whatever it's telling me, you know, whatever it is in that moment. Usually it's to slow down.
It's a big one, or to express something that's being held in.
Yes, definitely to express an emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So with the lupus, and I will go into my trauma a little bit. So, right around when I started asking for more answers, and
Mm-hmm.
I had already been on the healing journey, but I wasn't healing completely. And I was going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this is just one of those symptoms, one of those things that sort of that epiphany where I was like, oh my God, it's this early childhood trauma. And I found out about a discrepancy that had gone on in the marriage. Plus, there was the divorce and was very emotional. And I had the worst flare I think I may have ever had. I mean, I was out for like 3 weeks, like non-functional, in bed, body pain all over. And I realized like the trigger wasn't gluten or, like the mold or I don't know, whatever. The trigger was this emotional thing, And so I do think that in early childhood, there was some attachment stuff that I needed to heal from my parents. And God bless them. They did the best they could. But I'm not sure of the details. I just have, my memory now to go on. And, what I have sort of accepted and what I actually love about SBSM too, I'll say, is that I don't have to know the details. And I actually think I kind of do leave it up to my body and to spirit to be like, enough, like, enough. And the details of of everything that happened or how many times it happened, things like that, are not necessary for me to heal. And it's one of the most beautiful things about this course is that, because I think with certain techniques for healing trauma, like EMDR, you talked about psychedelics on a YouTube video, which I loved, and I sent it out to a couple of friends, is that you can go too hard, too much, But with SBSM, you don't have to go into the trauma to heal it, So it's like it touches on it just enough that the body will release what you need to know. Because a little bit more did come out actually with SBSM. But again, I really think it was only what I needed, right, to heal it. And then maybe, I continue to do this work. So maybe in a year or 2 months, another layer will come out, because I think if we try to just, like you said, like blow the whole thing open all at once, we could re-traumatize ourselves,
100%.
Yeah,
Well, we can re-traumatize ourselves. And excuse me, for those that, let's say, we could call it a preponderance to whatever autoimmune is,
right.
It can also re-flare that because, again, the system doesn't have the capacity to digest the emotion, the memory, and then it can just shut it back down.
Yeah.
As you've learned. And I think what you said is really important, Selden, in that I know that a lot of folks don't want to enter into this work because the fear of what they might remember.
Yes.
And I also want to acknowledge that what you said about how you became a bit more spiritual, you were asking for help, like what is going on, what's wrong. That was sort of the signal to the cells in your body also.
Yeah.
That, hey, I'm ready to find the next thing that's going to help this. So I think that's just it's a beautiful trajectory and a very titrated trajectory you just shared because, as you said, you don't need to know the details because with something that is like an early trauma, let's say age 4, whether it's sexual abuse or surgical trauma or a physical injury or a near-death injury that kids have, the system goes into a state of shock.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing to know. It'll shut down, and then, of course, the somatic senses are going to numb out, dissociate. And so when you mentioned that you were dissociating early,
exactly,
it all kind of, the puzzles all, the
right.
pieces fit together, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's what I noticed because I was like, there was a bit of cognitive dissonance around the whole thing when it first came up because at the time I wasn't fully trusting my body and what was coming in, right? And so when it did first come up, I was like, is this true? But then it was like when I said like all roads led to, it was like all the, when I look at my kindergarten little report card, every single teacher said I was daydreaming, not
Ah,
able to concentrate. I'm like, oh my God, it started this young, you know? So,
yeah.
um, and then relationships, and there's again so many layers, but there were so many signs, that like this was the sort of the culprit, like that
Hmm.
underlying culprit of what was going on. It was like that last layer that I needed to heal, to the point that, I mean, I function like all the time.
Yeah.
Amazing. I wasn't doing that a year ago, you
Yeah.
know?
So
It, it's incredible.
no, and you're vibrant and you look great and you've got energy and
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Yeah.
So can you give a little for those that are not familiar with Smart Body, Smart Mind, and they're like, so what the heck is
What do
it?
you do? Yeah.
What can you, I mean, we can go in many directions, but when you began the work, do you still remember kind of the aha or the first thing that really landed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, first of all, the way you explain everything is really key for people who have the nervous system dysregulation, because, um, I didn't, let me back up.
Yeah.
When I first started, um, the practices. So basically, there's the exercises. What I love about the format is there's some science, right? There's some science around it, and you explain the fight or flight and the freeze and the dysregulation. And I should say, with autoimmune, what I didn't realize was connected to my autoimmune were all the other symptoms that I was having, like toxic relationships, like, you know, not being able to hardly travel, right? My kids kind of had to tiptoe around me all the time. All of these, I had a dysfunctional marriage. I mean, like, all of these were symptoms of my dysregulated system. And so once I started to really become aware of like my outside surroundings and what was being created around me, I realized like it's all connected. Like, they might call it lupus, but this is all connected to what's going on in my body, right? So with SBSM, it's really those exercises that you do, they're so simple, and they're so simple that in the beginning, and they're so slow that, well, for me, my experience is I wanted to fight. I wanted to flight. I wanted to leave. I was like, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this. And it's crazy because I had been meditating and doing breath work for like 10 years. So it's a whole
Yeah.
nother level of feeling the body, because I want to say, in meditation and breath work, you can leave. You can
Hmm.
use it as a tool to actually leave. So it's like coming back in. I was like, this isn't cool. Like, this doesn't feel good. And my heart would pound, and my hands would get sweaty, and I would be like, too much, too much. It's crazy. And so then I kept going. I would only be able to do 5 minutes of a lesson, but I kept going and kept going, and I would have to take long breaks. It took me like 9 months to finish the 12-week course,
Yeah.
you know?
That's pretty good, by the way.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That
No,
was,
and
well, I still, actually, I don't even think I've completed the last lab. I want to say, because I keep repeating,
Mhm.
I keep repeating. I actually think I didn't even do the last lab yet, now that I think about it. But that's cool. I didn't know that was pretty good.
Well, I think I really appreciate what you said is that, 5 minutes was enough, and
Yeah.
it sparked what your survival physiology was really feeling.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, of course, one could still bypass doing my lessons, but it's pretty set up such that it's not encouraging that bypass, that
Yeah.
disconnection. And so for those listening going, what? Like 5 minutes? Like that seems insane. Think about it this way, like when you're learning a new language or you're learning a new skill, you're not going to do the full shebang in the first moment. You're going to do a tiny bit so that your body and your brain and your motor memory remembers
Yeah.
that.
And then you review, and then you do it again, and then you get, and so that's kind
Mm-hmm.
of how I would do it. I would just like do it again, and then, I would just stayed with orienting forever because I
Yeah.
was like, because then what would happen is I would fall asleep,
Mm.
and I was just out like after, and then I wake up and be like, well, I got a good nap, and I don't think I got the lesson in, like 'cause my body was just shutting down.
Yeah.
And then I kept at it. And then after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, I was like, something's really different. I was able to I was able to go through probably the whole exercise,
Mm-hmm.
and stay awake. And what I think was interesting about it too is I would feel like I had gotten a workout. Like my mind, like my brain felt like it got a workout.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was something internal that felt like, whew, that was like, I really moved a needle in this. You know what I
Totally.
mean? Like it really felt significant. And then after about 6 months, I started to notice the changes in my surroundings. Like I started to, I think it was one of your videos or maybe even in the class that you talked about, like you start noticing your environment more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, obviously, but like you want to make it cleaner. You want to make it like it just changes started happening. And then fast forward, we're at about a year now. And I mean, I can have the toughest conversations with my ex-husband and not get into a fight.
Mm.
And I mean, like it, it's it's the most profound thing because like he triggers the shit out of me. And
Sure.
maybe some of you guys, some of the people that are listening can relate to this. And it might not seem like a big deal to other people, but for someone who's been in fight or flight and freeze, because my system really was jumping. I would take the stimulants to get out of
Mm-hmm.
freeze, and then I would be way up here in fight or flight, and then I would
Mm-hmm.
come down from fight or flight, and I would go down into freeze. And then in the meantime, I was drinking alcohol and drinking coffee and doing all the things. But that fighter, even when I stopped taking stimulants, um, I my system was just like it was just, and so I couldn't have these just normal
Mm.
conversations. It was like I was always just defensive and fight, and
Yeah.
there was always a reaction.
A fight that needed to
There was a fight.
express.
Yeah, yeah. And anyway, so that was a massive thing.
Mm.
I can travel freely. I sleep at night. I've spent years not sleeping. Like
Mm.
literally, I had the worst insomnia.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I sleep now. I mean, again, it sounds like something simple, maybe most people take for granted. For a person who can't sleep, it's a
Yeah.
big deal,
It's huge.
It changes your whole life,
Yeah.
when you start to sleep.
The
Um,
connection
yeah,
too, for those who are super new to this work, the early trauma that you shared, when that occurs to us when we're really young, and again, it actually it not so significant what it was, but that your system was disrupted and not safe.
yeah,
And so fast forward into your life, you're going to look for ways to fight, to defend.
yeah,
And so those relationships are hard to form because the triggers are coming
exactly,
from that old trauma. Same with the
exactly,
sleep. You know, God only knows. It's like, I'm not going to go to sleep because when I did, or when I was alone in a room, this is what occurred to me. Even though
right.
you can't
Yeah,
consciously remember that.
exactly. And it was
Um,
happening at night. It did happen at night. Yeah,
exactly. So the system is like, well, I'm not going to go to sleep because if I go to sleep, something bad could happen.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
So
and
you're,
I mean, on top of that, I just want to add to that.
yeah.
On top of that, I grew up, this is important for people who are watching that have autoimmune or lupus. I grew up in an environment that it was constantly, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you. And I was constantly trying to say like, I don't feel good, and no
Hmm.
one believed me. And so a lot of that fight in me is that,
Yeah.
or was. Now it comes from like a healthy place,
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of it is from just the whole upbringing, that I had to really fight to get my voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
was not heard until just recently.
Recently, yeah.
I wasn't diagnosed with lupus until I was 40. And I will say, I don't, for me, I don't know that that diagnosis was important, but it was because finally the people around me believed me and could start supporting me.
Yeah.
It's like an
Yeah.
interesting thing because people will ask me all the time, well, do I need to go to a doctor and get a diagnosis? And I'm like, look, it all depends on your support system.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to have it because I felt like they needed to have it,
Exactly.
you know? And anyway, so yeah.
That's an important distinction, Selden, because I think because you are not in that victim identification role with
Exactly.
what has occurred, you're neutral to that. But it's true if you do have a family system that you need help from, support from,
Yeah.
then they go, oh, okay. And then, but then you don't fall into that role of this is me, right? Versus this is
Right.
what I've lived with or I'm living with, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
did
and yeah.
SBSM in 2021. We're in 2022 right now. Is that correct?
Yep. And I'm
So
doing it again, by the way.
yeah,
I'm
no.
doing all the labs and stuff. I'm doing them again. Not as much the science stuff, but all those practices. I mean,
Hmm.
I think I'll always keep them in rotation.
Do you
Um,
find that they're becoming just sort of natural?
yes, I want to thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I do them, I'm orienting kind of all the time, you
Hmm.
know? And it's so funny because I always say, like, I'll orient at stoplights a lot because, like, Atlanta traffic is horrible. And I usually have two young kids in my back seat, and I'm like, this is a good time to orient.
Yep.
And I'll just like look around. But I'm constantly checking in with my body,
Hmm.
um, and seeing where it is and if it needs to tell me something. And then I'll orient to my environment if I feel like I really need to. But for the most part, when I feel safe in here, I know my environment is safe, unless I'm like in some crazy situation, which I'm not usually,
Hmm.
then I'm okay. But I work in an addictions treatment center, and every class that I do, I teach about 6 groups a week. And every group that I do, we start with orienting.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's so great. And it's interesting because I think, when I first started, and for some of the people that I'm guiding through it, they don't fully get it.
Hmm.
There's still a little bit of it takes a minute to
Yeah,
like really get into it, and understand it. But, I'm planting the seed. So
it's
it's really
great.
important. Yeah. Um, and I did want to make this distinction too. I don't call what I go through, so my language around lupus, I'll say,
Yeah.
has really, really changed.
Yeah.
So now, if I do happen to experience fatigue or body aches for whatever reason, first of all, the time with which I'm uncomfortable is way shorter.
Hmm.
But now I don't call it a flare because a flare to me goes back to that allopathic model of victim, and it's something that you can't change and you'll have this forever and it can't be healed and all the things. But what I say is now, like, this is where my capacity is.
Mm.
I've gone out of capacity and I need to now go back into my rest mode to build my capacity for, whatever I have going on next. And I think that that's really important for people with autoimmune to understand because, you know, again, the body is just that signal. And so if you're constantly tired in this moment, You might need more rest
Yeah.
than you want to have, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is when we start doing this work with the SBSM and these nervous system somatic tools, we not only we grow capacity, but we also just get to this place of like being okay with that. Like being
Yeah.
okay that, I went on a 4-mile walk this morning and my hips were hurting at the end. I was like, I think I maybe went a mile too long.
Yeah.
Sat on the couch. I took some turmeric. They're fine now.
Yeah.
But it's like when you're first starting with autoimmune, you might be in pain and exhausted, like I said, more than you want to be.
Yeah.
But with time, your capacity really does grow. And I think getting out of the flare, your body attacking itself language is so important to
I
heal.
like that a lot because we do hear that, there's been a flare up, there's been a reaction, and okay. And what does that mean
Yeah.
at the body level if we take out that lingo from the allopathic world? And I have
Yeah.
nothing wrong against certain parts of allopathic medicine. It's helped me in many ways.
Yeah.
Um, but when you were mentioning quite a while ago at the beginning of our chat, you would do like 5 minutes and you felt like your brain was like
Yeah.
something was
Doing a
changing.
workout. Yeah.
That is the rewiring of the
Yeah.
neurons. You're
Exactly.
growing that capacity, but then as you do more and more, that capacity is bigger. As you said, the if there is something that comes up, the time for it to shift, it shifts a lot faster.
Yeah.
And there's, I
Exactly.
think, a lot of reasons for that. Your system is healthier, the capacity is there, but the mindset and the way in which you tune into it
Mm.
allows it to
Yeah.
leave so much quicker.
There's like a love and compassion that is now there.
Yeah.
Whereas before I was angry and mad at my body.
Yes.
How can you be doing this to me, body? And now it's like, thank you, body, for
Hmm.
telling me that, I what I need right now. Like,
Huh.
thank you for giving me this clue and because that's the body is healing. It's
Yeah.
wanting to
It
heal.
wants to
It
heal.
wants to heal,
Hmm.
And I think honestly, a lot of the reason that people are not overcoming, autoimmune is because they have it in their mind that it is a forever illness and that the body is attacking itself. And that, in my experience, is just not true, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Um,
Good work, lady. I'm
Hey,
curious, your kiddos, how has that shifted the way that you see them? And
oh my God,
because I,
it's changed
yeah.
everything. It's
Can you
changed
speak a
everything.
little bit to that? Because I would say that maybe the second most commonly asked question we get is, A, I've screwed up my kids. What can I do to help?
Yeah,
Or B, my kids have anxiety.
yeah,
Can they do the course? And of course they can't because it's set for adult
yeah,
learning. So
yeah.
what have you experienced and how you relate to your little ones?
Um, this is so important.
Yeah.
So I, when my daughter was born, she's 9.5. I was so dysregulated, and I mean, I did things that I really wish I hadn't done. I
Sure.
did cry it out. She actually was experiencing some symptoms of things early on. I won't get into her whole story, but
Mm.
um, I was I just did things that I would never do now. I wasn't listening. I wasn't giving her the time and attention. The problem, I was so dysregulated that I actually couldn't just be with her,
No.
you know? And so now I'm actually going back and reparenting and really the fact that I have the capacity and space to be able to hold space for them has changed everything. I mean, it's really like I they respond to me in a different way. They are sleeping better. They are having less anxiety. They are having less temper tantrums and all that. But I will say, it does take some time because they have also been sort of programmed that
Yeah.
like mom might be kind of scary and like we might need to tiptoe around mom and like, And so it took time. And even now, like my son wants to protect me and protect
Mm,
my emotions. And so we go
mm,
through this exercise that Elia taught me actually
mm.
of him naming all the things that are his, and then different things that are different
Oh,
about me,
fun. Yeah.
So we're sort of separating, because he did this sort of like wanting to protect me and worrying about my emotions, whereas my daughter's sort of more of the aggressive like
Hmm.
type. And so she was more acting out and sort of in that fight mode.
Yeah.
And but now I can sit down and say to them, what do I need to know about how you're feeling right
Oh,
now? You know,
mm. Yummy.
and that's all they want.
It's all
That's
they
all they
want.
want. That's all they want.
It's all they want.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. For all those listening who have those questions for us, it really it can shift. And when they're littler, when they're under that teenager age, there's
Yeah.
so much more adaptability. Not that you can't shift if a kiddo is already in their teens or mid-teens, but at that younger age, they're still dependent on
Yeah.
us as parents. And
Exactly.
they'll feel it. They'll feel the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I mean, I had a big heart to heart with my daughter the other day, and it's just beautiful because she's inquisitive and she really wants to know, like, she's curious too about what I'm doing and how I'm
Mm-hmm.
healing and how I've changed. And I try to share, age appropriate, what is good for her, what feels like she's ready to hear and stuff. And we will orient a little bit when she starts to get worked up and all the
Mm-hmm.
things. And but I've apologized to them too.
Yeah.
I've apologized. I've just said, I'm sorry that I let you cry when you were a
Oh,
baby.
yeah.
I'm so sorry. And they're like, it's okay, mom. And they don't get it fully what has
No,
taken place, but I believe that part of the reparenting can be us claiming what has happened and saying that's never going to happen again.
yep. Well,
Not again.
no, but it's so beautiful because their memories, even if they don't remember that conversation cognitively, their cells know that you are on their side.
Yeah,
And that's all that they need to know.
yeah, exactly. And the
Good.
behavior after that conversation shows that, you
Uh-huh.
know, yeah, it shows
Love
that
it.
because there's more trust.
Selden, anything else that you would love to share with the world about your experiences learning about your system? It can be specific to the course, it doesn't have to be.
Um, yeah, I wrote this. I kind of touched on it, so it might be a little bit repetitive, but I feel like it's so important, so I'm just going to say it again.
Review is good.
Yeah. I love how you wake up one day and you realize when you had a tough conversation with somebody or an interview with someone you admire or an emotional breakup or something happens that would normally have set your system off, and you realize, I don't do that thing anymore. I don't fight or have anxiety or panic attacks or shut down in depression on the couch. You realize those instances get farther and farther apart. Your reactions become responses. And it's strange realization because you don't know you're healing that particular thing at the time, but all of a sudden it's just not there anymore. And it's incredible. I know. I
Thank
did not
you.
expect to cry this much.
It's cleansing, it's healing. And
Yeah.
that's the key is that back in the day this wasn't allowed to show that emotion, and it's real. It's what
Exactly.
we are. We're humans. We're
Yeah.
mammals. We've got that. Tell everyone, what are you doing now with your world and your life?
Well, I'm trying to, helping people reverse their autoimmune,
Mhm.
particularly lupus. So I'm specializing in lupus. I've created a program. You can find me at Light Codes for Lupus at Instagram. And I do have a YouTube channel as well. My full name is Selden Baylooney. I'm sure you'll have that
Yeah,
here.
we'll link it all.
Awesome. And yeah, I go through, empowerment pieces. We do some hypnotherapy. We do some nervous system regulating tools that I've learned from Irene. And of course, diet and things like that are always included. Like I said, lupus and autoimmune is very layered. But really, I want to touch on the people who are not able to heal with diet, that have reached a plateau in their healing, and they aren't able to get over that hump.
Yeah.
And so, sort of that's kind of my niche and the people that I want to be focused on.
Beautiful.
Right now. Yeah.
And that's so important. I think, again, that's what we hear a lot, and you probably do, is I've cleaned up so much. I eat like a saint. Nothing isn't organic. There's no chemicals. There's no preservatives. It's all pure, pure, pure. And it's helped a bit. And the system rejigs with that clean out. But then it's like, wait, why am I still having these quote unquote flares? Why am I still tired?
Exactly.
So the holistic, multi-dimensional approach is super important. It also sounds like you work with more of the spirit realm. Are you bringing that in too?
I do, for sure. Yeah, I do. I'm a master energy healer as well. I definitely work in the quantum field and work with spirit teams.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I like to say I'm kind of a detective too, because it's like, if you've done so much work and you're not figuring out that piece, it's like we go on that hunt together to like find what that missing piece might be, And again, that might not be that we go into a trauma. It doesn't always have to be that way, but it might be that we actually heal the nervous system, or we heal a part of your body that wasn't being, had no attention before. And I mean, I think sometimes people just coming back into their body, that's enough sometimes, So again, many layers, and but I like to take that dive with people to really try to figure it out, because I try to ask the questions that nobody's been asking yet, So that's it.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for doing the work, showing up.
Thank you.
Talking and sharing.
Oh my gosh.
You're welcome.
Class changed my life so much. Yeah, so much.
We'll be in touch. We'll keep in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.